We're in the home of Dr. Don Paris, and I would like to ask him some questions about the field of radionics. I have come across some fascinating studies that indicate that radionics is the new quantum frontier. It's really the frontier where no man has tread before. Very few people seem to know about it. And you have written a book on it, Regaining Wholeness Through the Subtle Dimensions. And I want to know, what is radionics? If you could tell our viewer in just a few words what it is.
Well, radionics is a process of using electronic instrumentation to measure subtle energy fields. And subtle energy fields are like your aura. Your aura is an example of a subtle energy field, but we can become much more detailed in that. And then balancing those subtle energy fields that we find that are not in balance.
Can you give me an example? I mean, like demonstratable events. I mean, anybody can measure a field and say, well, you have a nice field. I could never debate that. How can you prove that to me?
Yes, here's an example I did with some lettuce seeds. I planted them, and before I planted them, I put a program into them with the SE5. In other words, I used radionics to balance these seeds. Now, the other seeds, to do a double-blind study, the other half of the seeds I didn't do anything to. I just stuck them in the dirt. They all got the same amount of water and light, and after 28 days, here's what they looked like.
Oh my God! Now, that's not a placebo effect, I can tell. You can't tell seeds to grow better just because you did something magical with this magical black box. So they indeed, I mean, massively look bigger. You didn't put fertilizers on them.
No, that was just the effect of having changed the subtle informational fields around the seeds before I planted them. I gave them the ideal situation, growing situation, in an energetic form. Now here's another example from the Institute of Resonance Therapy. They did a similar experiment where they balanced half of the seeds. The other half of the seeds they didn't balance. They buried them, this time for only 10 days, and then dug them up, and this is how they looked. Now you can see the untreated ones are much smaller. They don't have as big of a root system, and the ones that were balanced are much healthier, stronger, and more vital. They also did another experiment with some trees. They took some trees. Here's a picture of the trees before they did any balancing. They were having some problems with acid rain in that area. And then after 3 years of balancing, this is what they looked like.
That was a very fascinating study about the seeds. So if seeds can be made to grow, I recall also in your book that pests were able to be eliminated with the SE5?
The USDA actually did a study in 1952 where they show that to get rid of pests, they would treat radionically, now just sending informational fields. There's no physical contact, but just sending these informational fields to the rows of corn. They did 4 rows of corn where they treated them, 4 rows where they didn't treat them. And in the treated area, they eliminated the bugs by 81%.
81%. So why isn't this information out in public? Why don't tons of farmers use them?
Well, actually, there are farmers that do use the SE5 throughout the Midwest, but this information has been heavily suppressed. After these studies were done by the USDA, Dow Chemical Company found out that they were doing these studies, and so they did their own studies and found out it was just as effective as most of their pesticides. Now, you can imagine, if you were in the chemical company, you wouldn't want somebody to buy an instrument for a few $1,000s and never to buy pesticides again.
Indeed. So, that sounds fascinating. My God, you can grow seeds at a distance. You can eliminate pests at a distance. What could I do with it? I mean, at home. I am an author, I'm a wonderful person, but I don't have a farm.
Well, for example, you could use it to test your vitamins before you take them to know how effective they'll be with you and also how compatible you'll be. For example, here, I have a photo of you. We're going to put your photo in the SE5, and I'm going to test for general vitality. Your general vitality right now is 80%, and that's actually quite good. I'm impressed. Most people don't have that good of vitality. So, let's say, for example, you wanted to test a vitamin. So we can put the entire bottle of vitamins on the plate, and then we go and test your vitality again. Now, does it go up or does it go down? Okay? These particular vitamins are not good for you. They drop your general vitality down to 40%. So
I guess it wasn't the best brand I bought.
No, that isn't the right one for you. Let's try this one, some calcium magnesium. See what that does for your vitality. It brings it up to 100%.
So if I wanted to know if the calcium magnesium was really good for my bone growth, could I find out that?
Sure. Then we would type in the frequency for your bones. And we would test that first to see how strong your bones are without it. They're 90% already, so you've got good strong bones. But we can also then put this on the plate and we'll test to see how energetically it will interact with you. And specifically for your bones, 98%.
So it will actually improve the density of my bones?
Well, we can't make claims like that, but I would suggest from the readings that it would be a beneficial thing for your bones.
So that sounds really fascinating. I can then measure vitamins or herbs and see if they are effective at working on the condition that I'm trying to eliminate.
That's one way to use the SE5. But there are hundreds of ways to use the SE5, and I've tried to document many of them in my book, Regaining Wholeness Through the Subtle Dimensions. For example, in the health field, we could do an intrinsic data field analysis of the biofield systems, psychological system, cellular system, nutritional metabolic system, and we go through each one of the systems right on down the line until we get a complete overall view. The first part of the book is basically made up of the history of radionics and how and why the SE5 works, and then also how different people are using the SE5. Part 2 of the book is broken down into many different uses of the SE5, such as programming IDFs into a material like I did with the seeds, clearing stones and jewelry, replicating materials, potentizing substances, using it for business, health, or clearing negative energies, finding lost articles, clearing blockages, or using it in sports.
How can readers get this book?
Well, they can click on the link below and read it. They get it for free. Sign up for my newsletter, get my book for free.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Paris. I'm delighted to know you.
Thank you.